So going back to what I said about this fontanelle, and there's 4 bones. So one of the things that I like to check for on a baby is when I go across the top of the head very gently, I want to make sure all those 4 bones are lined up. So sometimes one bone can be higher than the other, or depressed, and I think that this is really important. So we know that when a child has cerebral palsy, it's a disruption of the coronal suture. Okay? So when that baby has a disruption, usually from a traumatic birth, they sadly will maybe end up in a wheelchair. So we're affecting the whole motor cortex, so the baby will not be able to move very well. So when I check a baby, I want to make sure that the top of the head is really smooth, and I can correct that very easily doing cranial techniques. It doesn't take long, but sometimes babies are crying a lot, and the mom doesn't know why. When they're crying, they're contracting that dura, and they're trying to help settle here, or maybe they're sucking a lot, but the baby's trying to self-correct, but the mother just isn't aware of that. So once this is smooth, it's a lot of times these children or infants will calm down dramatically, and after the treatment they'll have a really deep sleep, and actually during the treatment they are very relaxed, they quite enjoy it, and I think it's just taking a lot of the pressure off. But going back to cerebral palsy and the coronal suture disruption, I wanted to talk about a baby I saw once, and the mother came all the way from China to visit me in Hong Kong. I think the baby was probably about 3 or 4 weeks old. It cried a lot. She thought, it was diagnosed with colic or reflux, and I think it probably had some of that. But the first thing I noticed was there was a big disruption up here, and the baby wasn't even moving one side of its body. Its arm and the leg was kicking on one side, but the other side was just kind of lying there, and that was so obvious to me. I was quite concerned about that. So when I checked the top of the baby's head, I realized what could possibly be the problem. So I did all my treatment, going through the whole body, and then when I got to the very end, helping to balance the cranial bones, I was able to balance it because this child was so little, and the bones were, lots of space between the soft spots. I could balance her misalignment. She immediately started moving that right arm and right leg. I mean, it was immediate. She started moving it. It wasn't as fast as the other one, but at least we got whatever compression was going on up here alleviated, so now things were working. And I think that was just so amazing because sadly that baby may have never been picked up, and that child may have grown up to maybe be in a wheelchair for the rest of its life, and it's something that can be treated very easily. And it makes me often wonder, like when we think of somebody who is perfectly symmetrical, right? When you take a photograph, these people are very symmetrical, beautiful. It made me start to think about athletes, right? So a lot of the times when you look at an athlete is very symmetrical. And it made me think, wow, if their face is symmetrical and their body is symmetrical, this is symmetrical. So the message is going to the rest of their body is they're getting all the signals, right? So we have like a lot of gray area between somebody who is symmetrical or like an athlete who knows how to use their body, everything works really well. Of course, I know there's training in there. And then you have somebody with cerebral palsy. I think there's a lot of gray area in there where we don't get the full potential. Maybe they walk with their toes in, maybe they're not kneed, maybe there are other things that are going on. These things, in my opinion, can be corrected if you go to the professional, that you can find a professional who has this kind of experience to very gently correct them. It doesn't take long to see changes, and it's quite dramatic. So that's the importance of making sure the top of the head is nice and smooth, because that's telling me that there's a disruption if not. Now going back to the red bone, so that little hole right there is where the ear canal is, okay? So this red bone, if it gets rotated, one ear is more forward than the other, then it can affect the way the eustachian tube drains. So now this child might have problems with, buildup in their ear. The other thing too is this has a lot to do with balance and coordination, has to do with our language skills and things like that. So if they're really rotated, well, they might not get their full potential in their health and other abilities if we don't line them up. I know people will say to me, well, I really want my child's ears to be symmetrical so that when they wear glasses that will fit better. But and there's nothing wrong with that, but I look at it from a bigger picture of, our function is dependent on our structure. We're really no different than a building or a bridge. When the structure is sound and balanced, then everything is going to work better, it's going to be stronger. And the same goes for our body.